Well, Chris, what do you reckon? We got this huge war going on over in where Russia's attacked Ukraine. So, Chris, how do you see it?
Oh, look, the situation in Ukraine's very, very sad. And I think if you talk about, we'll talk, I think, a little bit later about the impact on kind of the rest of the world. And if we want to look locally, it's the petrol price is probably the place to start chatting about it. But I think what we've seen now is that Putin, I think, is now a war criminal, right? Like, he targeted a children's hospital this week. His green zones out of civilians, out of cities, were mined. I think that there is significant pressure on the Russian forces in the Ukraine. And look, the Ukraine is kind of stepping up in that space of legend now and myth.
So, Chris, the big question is the rest of the world doing enough? Because what are we doing other than cutting back their economy of some sort? And I don't even understand exactly how that's going to affect Putin himself.
Oh, look, I think what Biden's done this week, which is ban Russian oil coming into American ports, is probably a really big step in terms of those sanctions starting to hit much harder than what they could have been. I think the sanctions will start to isolate Russia even further. Their currency is now junk. It's worse than, say, like the Dogecoin or other shit coins that are out there. And the ruling classes in Russia will start to feel this very, very strongly.
Right. Well, should we open it up to our audience and see what they've got to say about it?
The United Nations should be calling out the war crimes that are now occurring. And that will put pressure on Putin to kind of start to be accountable for what he's done.
The really big issue, I think, is post this conflict, is how do we now start to address some of those great powers that were great in 45 and are now a little bit rusty and crappy, and have a different type of voice on the world stage for emerging countries, and take away the veto from psychopaths.
The first thing that needs to happen, Max, is that the veto granted to the five powers then has to be removed, and the Security Council has to be able to pass resolutions by an agreed percentage of, because otherwise the aggressor, in this case Putin and Russia, can be the only party on the Security Council that votes against a resolution.
But Ian, that won't fix the conflict right now. We need we need a quick action, don't we? What would fix it immediately?
It was Einstein who said, World War III will be fought with nuclear weapons, tactical or otherwise, but World War IV will be fought with bows and arrows. Because that war will take us all back to the Stone Age.
Absolutely.
God, that's a cheerful thought, isn't it? And are we close to that? Has anyone got a view on that?
If he is cornered, if Putin is cornered and going to lose face completely internationally, which seems possible, Putin may have no option but to continue and simply have to withdraw. And many people think...
Has anybody else got a view on that? Because is Putin feeling the pressure now enough to where he's feeling desperate enough? Will he push the button?
No.
Well, no.
I don't think he's going to push the button because once you push the button, you lose all credibility on the international stage, and you firmly cement yourself in this situation as a war criminal. It's very, very different to when the United States dropped those bombs in the 40s. We now know the destruction and the heartache that these weapons cause, and they are indiscriminate. And I think that Putin will want to try to find a way through this which enhances Russia's reputation, not subjugates them to the West.
He's threatened with nuclear weapons to keep NATO and the Americans at bay, so he can continue unaddressed to crush the Ukraine. He would rather crush it into submission than lose it to the West. And if you look at it, yes, the West is going to continue to sit back watching more and more missiles on hospitals and a whole range of other public places that crushes the country while everybody else watches. He's not going to go to nuclear, he doesn't need to, he's just going to crush the country.
All right, we need to bring this war to an end. What can the world do? What can NATO do? What should they do? Should they look after the airspace? Should they block the airspace? What is the answers here?
Initial response was he was fighting for the independent states, I think there's two of them, in the east of the Ukraine. The truth should be that they get handed back to Russia.
All right, anyone else got a comment?
Agree with that.
Yeah, Tiger.
The Western, the United Nations, the EU, the NATO should really say, okay, it's not enough, because otherwise we will go into World War III or nuclear war. But if you stop him now, there'll be a chance that we don't go through a World War III. That's my opinion.
The Western morals that we've had in a long, long time, particularly, I think, my short lifetime as well, and I don't think that they're standing up particularly well.